The child development, so 7, 8 years old. So we have physically, there's a big change, big change from first, second, and third graders. They are very active and need frequent breaks from tasks to do, so it's important that they can focus a lot on something, but the focus it's not a long time, so they need frequent breaks. Early matures may be upset about their size. Sometimes they grow really differently. You have tall child, you have some child who are quite small still, but they are all in the same class, and sometimes it can be hard for them. A second and third grader, it's really the age where the social emotional, sometimes it's really hard, and this is where we support them a lot on their social emotional growth. So for the social emotional, so the competition is rising. They can be very competitive, and they are choosy about their friends. So sometimes the cliques are forming, and so they have now a kind of a few best friends, and we want to stay and stick with them. So the acceptance by friends becomes very important. So when there is an issue or a conflict between them, it can be very upsetting for them. So here again, the social emotional learning and what we do in our program with Christopher is important, and we'll help them grow and cope with their feelings. Teams games become popular. They often idealize heroes, television stars, sports figures. So it's the beginning of their kind of opening their eyes on a new world. And if they get in a sport, they really like all the sport figures, and they try to really even model. That's their model, so it's important for them. They are very sensitive to praise and recognitions, and feelings are easily hurt. So what I told you is that this emotional aspect is a key for the growth inside the classroom where they are learning. It's something that we take into account, and we try to incorporate a lot of what we do as a retrospective justice. The circles, we try to build a community within the class to make them feel that it's a safe place where they can express their feelings. Expressing their feelings is very important, without judgment. Because friends become very important, there can be conflicts between adults' rules and friends' rules, and they can be inflexible about their idea of fairness. So you will hear about, oh, it's not fair, it's fair. And so they have this idea of fairness, which is kind of guiding their life. And to them, sometimes they feel that it's not fair because someone did something and it was not, the teacher did nothing, and they do something and they were punished. So this idea of fairness is also important, and it raises as they grow. And they want more independence, while knowing they need guidance and support. And for the cognitive part, they still are eager to learn everything. So they want answers to a lot of questions. They are curious. They start collecting things. And this collecting aspect it's also important because it's the first time where they can realize that they really when they have objects to find, and so they can have these guidelines. Oh, this is what I collect. I want to take it. I want to keep it. Sometimes it's a box, and it's reassuring them, but it's also they are identifying to those things. So it's really important to let them sometimes go on their idea of the collectibles, whatever they want, so objects of interest. And sometimes it's for a short time. You see, 1 month after, they will have forgotten that. They are capable of making relationships, start expressing original ideas, and this is very nice when we will dive into the learning process, the writing process, and how they draft their ideas, what kind of ideas they are writing and they want to express. So it's becoming really the age where the consequence and the concept and the argumentative language starts. And they start understanding abstract concepts. So abstraction, it's really something where we want to go. So in first, even starting of a second grade, it's still a lot of manipulative, and we still are in sometimes play to learn. But as they grow, they will start really going into the abstract concept, which is very important for them. So, transition, so from grade 1 to grade 3 and grade 2 to grade 5. So, usually the oral language, they are on the way of mastering the narrative language in French and in English. So, as you remember, and there's a slide after, grade 1 and grade 2, the teaching model, the instruction model is 80% in French and 20% in English. In grade 3, we are going to change this instruction model to 65% of English, 65% sorry, of French, 35%.
What?
No, 35% of English. We are increasing the English, lowering a little bit the French. And then in grade 4 and grade 5, it's even, it's 50-50. We are doing a week. So a week of French, a week of English. Even though it's not even because we have some specialists who teach French. For example, the music is in French, the art is in French, the science is in French, and the PE is in French. So even where they are in an English week, they get 5 to 6 hours of French. So it's not even, it's not 50-50, it's more 55-45. So reading, most of them are fluent readers. After, I think, first grade, they really enjoy reading, but the fluency starts mid-grade 2, and then it ramps up a lot. The more they read, the better readers they are. Writing, most of them can write a short text, and by the end of grade 2 and even grade 3, the expectations of writings will increase. So they will be asked to write, well, first with a good French, so lexicon, syntax will be very, well, there will be a focus. And they will also, in English, write more narrative and argumentative text. Discovery of the world, so developmentally appropriate understanding of their environment, so the concept of time and space. So grade 1 and grade 2, it's time and space, it's what they do around them, it's the history of you know, the grandparents, the timeline, and the neighborhood, the classroom. And starting in grade 3, we really start the history and geography as part of the program. So they will start with all the first men or the first people on Earth. The foundation in math, foundations are solid, mostly taught in French with the addition of bilingual math session. So remember that in grade 1 and grade 2, we have this program Number Corner, which is used by the English teacher, so this is US math, but also by the French teacher. So they know the first multiplication tables, usually by the end of second grade. Multiplication and division, they know the concept, they know how to share, they know what it means to divide. They cannot divide a big number, but they should know the concept of the division. And science, we are really emphasizing the scientific method. So we have an issue, we have a question, we have a problem. What can we do? What are the different steps? What are the hypotheses? Should we investigate? What are the conclusions of our findings? And then our findings, do they really correlate to the questions? Are we off in our findings? You see, this scientific method is really something that we teach from grade 1 to grade 5. So in second grade, so sorry for second grade parents, but in second grade you have so the French and English language arts, and we have this balanced literacy approach. So maybe Maggie will talk about that after the slide with G3. We have a bilingual math corner, so as we said, we use this tool to really put some math in English, and so we use this program, this curriculum, which can be really taught in French and in English, so it's really nice. We have also the problem of the week that we do, so this is something that we work on with other teachers. In grade 2, they will start physical education with a specialist. They will go on with a specialist until grade 5. Social studies, so it will be the start of the social studies with their teachers. Civic and social emotional learning, so with Christopher. art and science. So science will become STEAM in cycle 3. So science will be taught by, like in first grade, so Isabelle Leblanc. And gardening, which is also tied into the science program, because in the science program, in the STEM program, we designed the science with the gardening. So Jean-Marie is also teaching parts of things that, for example, Isabelle then will kind of dive into the broader concept. So they will see something very specific in the garden, and then Isabelle Leblanc will try to step back and use what they learn to kind of model a bigger concept. And so introduction of a scientific method. So that's what I told you. In first and second grade, the instruction model is 80% of French language arts and 20% of English language arts and US math. And of course, the benefits, I'm sure you know all that. A bilingual child will process some ideas quicker. The brain and the multitasking part of the brain is really developed. The perspective also, because the French programs are really focused on the perspective that you take. So when the French teacher teach a concept or whatever, they use this approach of, okay, let's change our perspective. What did you learn? What were your solutions? So we try to emphasize that to one question or one problem, we have different perspective, and taking into account this different perspective to really help kind of build our knowledge. And this is what the French programs really do with, and we teach this kind of thing. So the research, it's really the solving problem solving, and you see the differentiating sounds. And differentiating sound from K is really important, and then in first and second grade, because they really have a sense of the two language. So it's nice to be bilingual. In grade 3, the difference, so in a part of the instructional model, it's that since the English will become more present, in English we'll have social studies. So social studies will be taught also in English, and history and geography. And so we'll do math in both languages, so French and English. Will be the math. There will be language arts in French and language arts in English. I'm sure that you have heard that this year we piloted something new in grade 3. It's kind of a new model called Translanguaging. Translanguaging is that we try to not separate the language, but you try really to bridge the languages. And so what the two teachers of third grade have done is that they have opened their partitions. So there's no more one class and one class of French, one class of English. When there is a French teacher in one class, then the other class has the English teacher. And what they do, they try to teach the same concept bilingually. So there will be a mini lesson, 10, 15 minutes, for example, at the start of the session. And the mini lesson will be usually in French. So they will teach the children about a concept, about something. And then the children will have the choice of either going to an exercise in their language, English, or in French. But if they choose an exercise, for example, in French, then they will have to go to the English teacher for the correction and to explain that. So this translanguaging concept, in fact, all the research have proven that when you learn a concept, when you are really on the concept and you want to understand the concept, the language should not be a barrier. Mm-hmm. So we are learning on the concept, and then we are using the languages as part of that. But the language should not be a barrier to learn the concept. So from what we have seen so far for the 3 months of experimentation, it's going very well. They are doing a lot of bilingual journal, they are writing, the math is also going well. So then they can do small groups instructions with different levels. And you know, the classes are really now there's no separation of language like we can see. Although the separation of language can be good sometimes, this experimentation tends to show us that maybe it's the new way to go to learn concepts and language. So I don't know if next year, for example, in G3, we'll still go on with this. We have to evaluate, we have to ask the parents, the current grade 3 parents to see what they think about that. We have also to assess the growth of the students, because we know usually a growth in grade 3, what's the growth of a regular student, so we have to really assess that. Are the students of this year lower or higher, their level are higher than last year? We don't know yet, but we will assess and we will evaluate if we go on with this model or if we kind of go back to the model or where we have a French teacher, the English teacher, and we don't blend the two teachers. Maggie, do you want to talk about maybe Eureka Math in grade 3 and balanced literacy program?
Sure.
Please.
So just picking up on what Sébastien was just talking about these different models that we have in 3rd grade, all of that's possible because of all the work we've done in the last few years on harmonizing the two programs. So the fact that we are teaching the math and the reading and the writing bilingually. So whether the two English and French teachers are together or they are separate, they're still working on those same concepts at the same time. And so that's a lot of growth and work we've put into our curriculum in the last several years to get to that point. So for instance, with the balanced literacy program in 3rd grade, they move into what's called Reader's Workshop and Writer's Workshop. So as Sébastien mentioned, there'll be a mini lesson, and then there's long stretches of reading and writing where students will meet with teachers in small groups or individually one-on-one and also do some independent work or maybe work with a partner. So because students are more independent in grade 3, they're capable of more autonomy around their reading and writing. And they also do a lot deeper work into genres in 3rd grade. So like the first writer's workshop unit will be on personal narrative, writing a true story about themselves. And they'll end up with a bilingual story. So that's where we talk about applying the concepts to both languages. So they'll learn the strategies of how we write true stories, how we include dialogue and action and things like that, and then they'll be applying those in the two languages. In reading, they also start getting more into different genres, especially informative text. How do we read informative text? How do we write informative text? They'll learn for the first time in 3rd grade how we read on a new topic and then write about that. And that's actually really important introduction because that's going to be a big part of their academic career as they move forward, right? So they kind of learn all the strategies and tips of how to do that. And then with the math, as Sébastien mentioned, we have this bilingual curriculum. In 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, we use Eureka Math. It's a Singapore-inspired approach in that it uses the methodology of Singapore math with bar models that are visual models for them to represent math concepts, and they use them with word problems. There's a big focus on solving word problems. And because it's done in both French and in English, then there's a seamless transition into learning the concepts and applying them in both languages. As 1st and 2nd grade parents, you have access to an enrichment site, which we introduced at the end of last year, and your students got their new access and accounts this year for Zern Math. If any of you have used Zern Math, the reason that we've chosen Zern as an enrichment site is because it is the accompanying website to the curriculum that we're using in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade. So 1st and 2nd graders who are using Zern at home will have a better transition or easier transition to 3rd grade math. It's also important that students get some mathematical content input in English. So as most of the instruction is done in French in 1st and 2nd grade, for students whose stronger language is English, which may not be the case for all of you, but certainly for a majority of you, then it's important to have some of that math input and teaching of the math skills in English. Sometimes it seems counterintuitive, but the research shows us that using a child's strongest language actually helps them acquire their second language. And of course, keeps them up to par with all the academic content standards that we're doing in each of those languages.
Thank you.
Okay.
Do you have any questions regarding the math program or advanced literacy?
One quick question on the math program. What would be the key differences between the math learned here and on one hand the math learned in France and the French curriculum, and then same with the California curriculum, like just maybe the key differences for both?
Right. So that's a great question. So one of the things that we've examined, we went through a 3-year process where we really looked closely at how we were teaching math. And one of the things that we determined is that we really had to harmonize the standards from the 2 programs. One of the nice things is that the current French curriculum and the Common Core Math are actually more closely aligned and have more similarities than 10 years ago, the old California standards and the old French curriculum. So that actually works in our favor. So what we do is we use the American standards as our base, and then any of the French curriculum standards that aren't kind of included or not included as in depth, we do supplement with those. So in 1st and 2nd grade, it's very easy because we're using a French method book, and so the supplementation we're doing is on the American standard side with the number corner, as Sébastien mentioned. And then in 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade, it's kind of a little bit flipped. So that core Eureka program is actually based on the US standards, but then we can use other materials and resources from the French program. What we want to do is we want to keep the unique strengths of both of the curriculums. The French program does go a little deeper into geometry in the lower grades and in construction and visual spatial elements, which on the American side is also included, but it's in those next generation science standards. So that's another thing that we look at when we look at our whole program, is where things are introduced and how they're introduced. The US program, especially in the upper elementary grades and in middle school, is very strong on fractions. The US curriculum goes much deeper into fractions. They learn to add, subtract, multiply, and divide fractions. And the research shows that this emphasis on fractions actually helps students acquire their algebra skills better. So we want to keep that element too. So we kind of basically take the strong elements from both of those approaches to math, and we try to integrate them in a way that makes sense to students, especially since they're not just learning one thing with one teacher and then jumping over to another concept. Concepts are worked on at the same time so they can be mastered and applied in both languages.
Which is really rare to have this kind of harmonization. We have really worked hard to have this alignment between the 2 skills and the 2 standards to match them and maximize the time that the students have. So to your point, I think the key is geometry. Geometry in French standards, it's really focused on, maybe a demonstration and kind of tracing and having all the materials, so answering a problem, an issue. But we do that kind of sideway. We supplement the Eureka Math.
And the biggest thing that we looked at when we went through this long process to really dive into the math, how we were teaching it, what materials we were using, and how we were balancing things between the standards and the languages, is that we want students to be well prepared for matriculating into any school. So after 8th grade, some of our students go to American public schools, American private schools, some of them go to French schools, and math is kind of a high stakes academic content area, and so we want to make sure that our students are prepared to do that. And our results show that students typically when they go into high school are actually a year above. So they're not entering where most freshmen enter their math class, they're entering into what sophomores will take for math. So that shows that, that what we're doing is very effective and is preparing students well to move on.
Thank you, Maggie. And so that shows why, because in grade 3, we are using some evaluation and standards testing called MAP, Measure of Academic Progress. And so this MAP, the students will take them every year in fall and in spring. and they are usually, so it's untimed, it's really low pressure, it's in English, and the growth is focused on the students. So usually what the map will do is that when the students answer a question or give an answer, the test will go according to his answer. So if the answer was right, then the level will go up. If the answer is not right, well, then it will go down until the answer gets right, and you can have another path. So it's really nice because it's centered, it's focused on the child, on the student. Of course, we get a matrix of the results of the school, of the grade, of the classroom. But what we do as we take it 2 times a year in fall and in spring, we really see a growth. So on these areas, math and reading, so literature, there's also vocabulary, so there are different topics. It gives a sense first of where our students are regarding the French program. So we can compare us with the French American schools in North America. We are in the same area, so we have a map of the results of the 25, 30 schools. And then we can also compare to the French schools in France. And so sometimes we, for example, for the 2nd grade, we realize that on some exercise, our students were far advanced than some students in France. So you see, this is why we take this kind of different tests. This one is more American. Grade 1, grade 2, it's more French, because we want also to have the French basis of language and math concepts. So it's really important that we take both evaluation testings. And to conclude, in grade 2, this is just what a grade 2 is able to write. So you see, this was, for example, the description of a witch. So with really detailed, so it was the eyes, the nose, the mouth, the hair, so all the clothes. And so these students kind of described the witch using adjectives, using the verbs, and this scaffolding is very interesting, because then we can really have a great text of a witch description. This is a kind of words, this kind of sight words that sometimes they are asked to write. And this is where the negative sentence, when you have in French les négations, so we really emphasize also on that. So the handwriting, they use cursive, but as they go up, sometimes the cursive, they tend to go away from that and go back to a script. It's more fancy. And but in grade 1 and grade 2, we really want them to have this kind of handwriting, even though if a student is really struggling and doesn't want to go into this handwriting, we are absolutely fine with it. And for the math, this is the first evaluation. This is the 2nd grade evaluation. This is the homework. So usually maybe the 2nd grade parents we can talk, but usually homework is about 20 minutes per day. Should be 20, 30. It should be not more than 30 minutes for 2nd graders. Really, homework. There have been many studies on that. Homework is not something that will help a child progress or grow. It's really not this. What will help a child grow is what happens in the classroom. So engaging activities, individualization, the teacher, and of course homework. They need to do homework for kind of repetition, and sometimes I think, but they can't have a 1 hour homework. It's not possible. So usually either you time it, or you ask the teacher, well, we have something going on because my child is taking maybe more than 20 or 30 minutes of homework. In grade 3, So grade 3, we start really to dissect the language. So this is how they will learn how it, so the comparison between the French and the English, for example, here this is the plural when we say they, for example, and when you say they, you just have the verb in English. So it's really comparing, compare and contrast, and asking them to reflect on the language. And this is what we do a lot in grade 3, and the teaching instruction, the instruction model, so 65-35 is really helping to do that. So it's nice. So you will see more bilingual lessons and really more links between the two languages. Here, for example, same thing. So this is how you will still engaging, still something very fun with the flower, and then you have all the ending of the verb just behind the flowers. So it was really nice. In grade 3, so this is what they can do, but this is no more, they won't have, like in grade 2, the math book, like Pick B or whatever. They won't have that anymore. Eureka Math, it comes with just papers, so it will be only papers. There's no method, there's no book. Okay, so this is some French thing. This is some kind of bar model. So sometimes the French teachers supplement the work with some things that what has been extracted from the French book. But usually with Eureka Math, you will see it's more paper and it's less book and like that. And this is a short video about the PE.
3, 2, 1, 0. Allez-y. En CE2, je travaille beaucoup sur la motricité, qui inclut courir, sauter, marcher. Et tout ça, ça se passe à travers des jeux. Donc, je privilégie le côté ludique de l'activité sportive. Donc, les enfants s'amusent en apprenant, donc ils se donnent à fond.
At the beginning of third grade, he said, "Bonjour, je suis Patrice, le plus méchant des profs." He was trying to make like the kids who didn't know him that well think he's mean.
When in reality,
He's really nice.
Je mets beaucoup l'accent sur leur estime personnelle. Chacun de mes élèves, quel que soit son talent, trouve le moment de pouvoir briller, le moment de pouvoir s'exprimer. Et donc, ils sont tous à l'aise pendant la séance. Quand c'est comme ça, est-ce que tu lui dis des choses méchantes ou tu lui dis? Et quand il y a un conflit, ils ont la possibilité de s'expliquer, ils ont la possibilité de résoudre le conflit. Donc, il y a vraiment une assurance et une ambiance vraiment amicale et fraternelle dans le groupe. L'éducation physique, c'est l'un des moments de la journée de l'élève où il a véritablement une interaction avec ses autres camarades de classe. Et c'est le moment où on ne joue pas seulement avec son ami, mais on joue avec tous les autres. Et pour moi, je tiens absolument que cette interaction se passe dans le respect de l'autre, non seulement le respect en tant qu'individu, mais le respect de son talent aussi. Ok, bien. Voilà, et vous essayez d'avancer. Je veux m'assurer qu'ils se fassent des amis, que chaque jeu soit très amusant pour eux et qu'ils repartent de ma classe. C'est vrai qu'ils ont appris quelque chose, mais qu'ils entretiennent l'ambiance et la joie de revenir le lendemain à l'école. C'est le plus important.
When I pick up my daughter from school and I know that she had robotique or science or whatever it is, I'm always like, well, what did you do today? She's like, oh, we don't do robotique anymore. And I was like, oh, okay, so what did you do instead? And it would be nice if you're saying that you have you've got all these curriculums and that they're doing it. It would be nice if we got sort of an overview of what it is specifically that you're talking about so we can talk to our children about it.
Okay. You mean like monthly?
Monthly would
Yeah?
be great, because,
Okay.
I mean, in garden time, when she was talking about
Yeah.
creating, then she's really capable of telling me what they were up to, because it's very
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
tangible, and so we have a discussion about it.
Yeah, sure.
And and my daughter's a fairly accurate reporter, but it would be nice to hear just generally what it is that they're up to.
Yeah, yeah, sure.
Because, I mean, I know that they read and do math in class, but I
Yeah.
don't know what they do outside of that.
Hmm. So you mean more about the specialists, like
Yes.
so the music you are interested in? No?
Any of
Yeah?
them, like anything that's not just learning to read and
Yeah,
learning
yeah.
to do math, it's like, well, what are you talking
Okay.
about? And I don't have a way to,
Yeah.
to
Okay.
hear that from her.
Yeah, I can prepare a document when they a kind of overview, a yearly overview of the different activities and the teaching skills. Yeah, sure, per specialist, no problem. Yeah, sorry.
You mentioned earlier that there's a lot of research that shows that homework doesn't actually help. I'm not sure if I
On the top of the student growth, like let's say we can have 10 things that really support and help a student grow. It would be number 8. It's part of a growth, but it's not the top 5 helpers for a student to grow.
Are you able to share any of that?
Oh yeah,
research?
sure.
Because I'm very curious about it.
Yeah, sure. There have been many studies about that, and it's really because first homework, and also in a bilingual setting more. Sometimes some parents are able to help the students, but some parents are not able to. So first, it can really be a big difference between 2 families and 2 children. And then, when you talk about homework, the new trend and the new pedagogy and how we teach math, how we teach French, it's really different than what we learn at school. And so sometimes when you want to re-explain to your child and when you want to kind of, well, let's do that way, and he will tell you, no, I didn't not learn that way. And it's kind of confusing for them. And it can be really confusing if you are not using what we do at school. So that's also the link between the school and the family, that we have to be really on the same page. And finally, the homework in lower grades, they spend 6 hours in class learning, doing a lot of writings, reading, and at the end of the day, they are exhausted. And so the learning process is not the same. So that's the reason why sometimes it's more repetition. And if you do 1 exercise, you're okay. You don't need to have 10 exercise or 10 additions or 10 pieces. So it's really, so maybe I can show you the...
It's meant to just review concepts they've already learned. So we're not expecting growth to happen because of homework, because homework is just kind of reviewing, like I said, things that are already learned. But one of the points in the research is also that in the elementary grades, that reading at home is one of the most effective ways to help your child, and so that's why we encourage families to read at home as part of their homework. There's a couple, exercises in their cahier, again, just to review skills they've learned, and also for you as parents to kind of see what kinds of things that they're being asked to do in class. But reading is really effective, whether it's you reading to your child in any language or them doing some reading. And then, as we mentioned, we have these 2 enrichment sites that are nice resources for parents at home. The Zern is for the math and Raz Kids is for reading. What's nice about Raz for reading, even though it's on a digital format and not a real book, all the books are leveled in French and in English. So Raz is a nice resource for you as parents, because sometimes you pull a book off the shelf or at the library and it's fine for you to read aloud to that book to your child, but you may not know what book they're ready to read on their own. And so by using the Raz system, which has the leveled books in both languages, it can be a nice resource for independent reading at home.
And for the reading part, for example, I'm going to take a personal example. Yesterday evening, I was reading with my child. He's in 3rd grade, and so he brings the book that he took at the library. And it was a nice book around the spaceship, and the topic was really interesting. The title was appealing to him, but right from the start of the first chapter, the vocabulary was too complicated, too complex for him. The structure were too difficult, and after 3 or 4 sentences, he was not able to even tell me, okay, what are we talking about? What's the main character in that? So sometimes it's really nice to have the books that they are able to read, and so they grow step by step. I know that a lot of students really like, because the topic is it's nice, so they want to take it. But then, if you are not sitting with them, and if you are not taking the time to scaffold, to explain all the vocabulary, well, the book won't be helpful for them. So yeah, the level books are really good for them.
I was kind of curious about the leveling of the books. I noticed on my first graders, Raz Kids, that I don't know if it was like beyond his level or if there was like a wider range of books offered or what, but like I noticed there was like Poe and Twain in his reading list, which I was slightly disturbed by, to be honest.
So on Raz Kids, I'm not sure which. Yeah, I'm not sure which books you're looking at because again, they're not like whole books on Raz Kids. Like they're leveled short books that are meant to be for those certain levels. But I can look at that account and see if his
there's like
pictures less emphasized, so they read the words more and pictures.
Yeah,
are not.
definitely. That's that. So we begin in first grade with easy books. A lot of times they begin like with predictable pattern books, and then as they gain more skills in decoding, then they'll move into books with less picture support and more decoding of the words. At the beginning of the reading process, one of the most important things that research shows us is it's helpful to get kids engaged, like to put them in the skin of a reader and have them interested in reading books on their own. And so that's why those easy books are, a nice entry level, and then as they get into second grade, they'll be reading longer books, harder books. Also in first grade, they reread a lot of books, so they'll get a short book in guided reading and they'll reread it several times. Starting in second grade, the books are longer and the rereading isn't as necessary because they're gaining a lot of fluency skills. So they'll just read that book once and then they'll move on to other books.
Second question.
Yeah.
Is there a way we can print those books?
From Raz Kids? No, because there is a way, but it's not through the account that we provide.
If I understood correctly, you're using math testing from grade 3 on, and the French system before that, so why not use both? And like, what's the rationale for that?
That's a good question. One of the things is that the math test only starts at third grade. So the type of test that it is not for younger students. It's for 3rd through 8th grade students, and it's a standardized test.
And the French test go not after grade.
Okay. All right then.
It's just, the purposes of the test are different. So in the 1st and 2nd grade national evaluations, they really want to see,
the phonics.
the phonics piece and our students gaining those basic skills. And then as they grow older, they use other type of curriculum assessments, and the math is the opposite.
So who does math? Like what's the company behind?
Oh, it's NWEA, which is the Northwest Education Association, something like evaluative. I don't remember what this stands for. It's NWEA.
But there is a way that French teachers are still evaluating their students in the 3rd grade and
sure. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So like I said, it's not necessarily the standardized test comes from France, but there's a lot of quizzes and assessments and authentic assessment that's done. And we also have the literacy assessments that are done individually in French and English at the beginning and end of each year, starting in 2nd grade. So we can see exactly what level they're reading at.
And a few years ago, the French Education Ministry provided evaluation in 5th grade. And so we are able to use them just on a regular basis. So sometimes, not every year, but sometimes we focus on, well, let's test them on, you know, French literature. So it's a long text, and with really implicit questions, and to see if they understand the reading, etc. So it's also nice sometimes, and we still have access to them.